I'd like to call this meeting to order and announce that as of this morning, with the assistance of the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, we've just formed the North American Shaolin Association, composing of representatives from California to New York, the states in between to Canada, and that the association has just been formed this morning. So it's another way of saying that the Shaolin Temple has landed in America. Chan present the power of mind and martial arts. I'd like to call to the stage Mr. Jonathan White. He's an acclaimed author, filmmaker, technologist, who's quite accomplished in helping the West understand the mysteries of the East. Jonathan Blank will be serving as the moderator today. I'd like to call, last but not least, Lucia Rijker, world champion kickboxer, first female inducted into the International World Boxing Hall of Fame. Where's Gene? Gene?
Is Gene Ching here?
I'm here, sorry.
There he is. All right. Okay. I was captivated by this Buddhist monk who had mastered these various arts of tranquility and peace and compassion, and yet who had this amazing fighting ability. And I think for many of us there is always this sense of, is there some kind of conflict between being a Buddhist and being a martial artist? And so I'd like if we could talk a little bit about what Buddhism and martial arts have in common and why there are so many Buddhist martial arts out there.
Well, first of all, I want to clarify that there are many different sects of Buddhism. On the essence, every religion is the same, including in Buddhism, but there are different ways to get where you need to go. In the Buddhism that I practiced, what I learned was that I had to create the most amount of value with where I was right now. And in that time, I was a competitive fighter. And when people ask me, how come you're brutally knocking people out and you're Buddhist? Isn't Buddhism all about peace? I said, there's some Zen temples in the day that were actually educating samurai fighters. But that's the Zen, and I didn't practice Zen. But what I learned was I created the most amount of value with what I had at that time, at that particular day. And I created value by being the best I could possibly be and fully respecting my opponent. I never talked down on my opponents. I needed my opponents to bring out my fullest potential as a martial artist. You can't do that alone. So that's how I used my opponents and my performances to really excel as an individual, as a woman. I wanted to also show that women have tremendous power to perform in combat. And my Buddhist practice actually helped me to be the best in the world.
Gene, you've seen a lot of Kung Fu over the years as publisher of Kung Fu Magazine, and a lot of them are tied in some way to Buddhism or Taoism. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's actually two answers to your question. One is that Bodhidharma, in one of the sermons that was attributed to Bodhidharma, said that we actually could kill the Dacascos. Now you got to get to the root reason of why we don't do violence, and that is because we believe as Buddhists that everybody has potential for enlightenment. Everybody has potential to be the Buddha, and so you don't kill the Buddha. However, Bodhidharma in one of his sermons said that, or one of the ones attributed to him, said that you could kill the Dacascos, which were creatures that were so sensual, so wrapped up in delusion. Now, most Buddhist schools, pretty much all Buddhist schools, have disavowed this teaching. But that would be the scholarly answer. On the metaphoric answer, when you think about martial arts and what are we really doing, what are we really studying, what we're trying to do is we're trying to dispel that same delusion. You know, the enemy is not necessarily some mugger on the street or somebody doing violence to you, but it's actually some spiritual thing, or it's something that's intruding on your ability to be self-actualized. And so, if you look at that from a metaphoric standpoint, the reason we practice is, in essence, a model metaphor dispelling this, for getting rid of it.
I like that.
Hello.
Which as a young teenage boy was essential because, I mean, I saw the Kung Fu movies and all I wanted to do was practice martial arts and fight. You know, not to hurt somebody, but to get the energy out and the spirit that was going through my body that I didn't understand. And I have to say that it was when I saw Jet Li in the movie The Shaolin Temple, I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. So at the time I was living in Hamburg, Germany. I sold my drum set, I saved my money from teaching lessons at my father's Kung Fu school, and I bought a ticket, and my father and I, we went to Taiwan so that I could practice Chinese and practice martial arts, and that someday I would be good enough in both that I could be like him.
Where you have used your mind to conquer your physical limitations.
Well, I have an athletic ability since I was a child. I was really good in sports, all kinds of sports, but somehow the martial arts fascinated me because it has a spiritual aspect to it. I coached Nadja Petrova in tennis, and tennis is competitive, but there's no physical contact element in it, and I thought, why didn't I become a tennis player? I was really good and athletic. And then when I coached her and I walked around on that field, I thought, I chose one-on-one combat for a reason, because it really excelled me and forced me to be a spiritual being and to understand the inner world, my mind power. Even during competition, when I analyzed my mind, what makes me win? What makes me win is how I judge the circumstances moment to moment. If I interpret a circumstance as defeat or as bad, that means I miss the next moment. That means I'm defeating myself. That means I become vulnerable to actually being defeated. If I interpret anything as is, just as it is, I'm being present and I can excel in the moment. And that I do as I compete. How to get there is rigorous physical training, but also I'd use a hypnotape. Like before I go to bed, which really talked me down into breathing, a deeper state, and then put in affirmations. Affirmations overcoming my fears, which was my attachment to the outcome of my competition. Any type of other attachments that I had to remove before competition. I always said, I have to combat myself first and my fears before I enter the ring, or else I'll be fighting two people, my opponent and myself.
So I'm also an avid surfer, and I found that being on the surfboard, and the waves in between the sets, the dolphins out there, and just nature, just sitting there kind of induced a very rhythmic, deep breath, which then came my meditation. I follow my son's lead, and also in the shower. Only a couple of minutes, because I know that we have water problems.
People here send their children to study Shaolin Kung Fu, and what is the real benefit? You seem very
I
eager,
really want to
Lucia.
answer.
All right.
In my childhood, I had a fantasy with martial art movies, so I learned to handle all the weapons. The knife, the stars at night, blindfolded, you name it, I did it. And then I learned to shoot all kinds of guns. I was fascinated by it, but it was also fear-driven. I felt unsafe on the inside. So when I started practicing Buddhism, I felt I was going to be protected by other forces. So I didn't need to protect myself in that way. So I changed my vibration, which meant my anger diminished. So I didn't pull anger towards me. I used to, if I would go to a place, a bar or whatever, I'd see the conflict happen, and it was always drawn towards me. Because I had a high anger vibration, I draw anger towards me. So I believe when you really practice, whatever you practice based on reflecting on yourself, changing your consciousness and your vibration, you change your environment, because your environment is a reflection of you. So if you walk around with a lot of anger and frustrations, you tend to draw things towards you. I also believe when you're being attacked, you have a certain vibration with you. The attacker first tunes into your energy field before he attacks you. And whatever he finds there, he will make a decision on whether he's going to act or not. So if you're powerful and present in your own energy field, he'll think twice before he attacks you. So just based on that alone, I think every child should practice martial art as a basic for their motor skills, but also to develop an inner strength.
One thing that people need to get a concept of is that surrounding Shaolin Temple is this community of martial arts. 45,000 people that practice martial arts, mostly children, tens of thousands of teachers. You have no idea. I mean, you can look at this room right now, look at all the people, imagine them all being children, all doing Shaolin, one of the forms we just saw, in synchrony, on a field somewhere. And that would be one of the smallest schools, private schools that surround. And these are not monks necessarily. Some of the schools are taught by ex-monks, but a lot of them are taught by folk masters. And so in terms of like incredible scenes, Shaolin is like walking on the Han's Island. You know, you look out and you see these fields of kids doing just all these amazing martial arts. And not necessarily just Shaolin too, because it's so big. You know, some of the private schools practice Taekwondo and Judo and kickboxing. It's very diverse because there are so many. And the multitude, I think, and you know, a lot of this we're talking about today is actually cultural exchange. So the multitude, the impact of that, and that sense of, wow, that's what China's like. You know, in comparison to my training, because I've been in martial arts all my life as well. And you know, I think, you know, I look at these kids and I look at them training out in the field. I remember watching a Sanda class. Sanda is a form of free sparring in Chinese martial arts. And there was a row of about 30 kids, and they were working on cement, and they didn't have any pads. And they were all, I guess one kid was bad, and he had to like take the technique from all the other kids in the class. And all those kids threw him down on the cement. And any one of those throws, and these are little kids too, were just broken my body. And I watched this, and thinking, you know, my God, I can't even imagine. You know.
One health tip to give people to improve their health, it would be to learn how to breathe. And breathing is at the very core of all Shaolin and other Kung Fu practice. And so I think this is really an excellent tip that you're getting here today from Yanfan.
I like to elaborate on the breath, because as an actor, that's one of the first things the acting coaches tell us. Breathe. Take the thought in, emotion out. And before I go on set, I'm always knocking my head and saying, breathe, breathe, breathe. Because a lot of times, you're under a lot of tension. You've spent 2 or 3 days learning your lines, and you're very nervous, and then they wait and they hold you off in your trailer. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Okay, hurry, we only have 20 minutes. And you have 5 pages of dialogue sometimes to do. And so the nerves are very tight. You have to breathe to relax. And then, like our monk was saying, you have to stay in that moment. And you have to breathe in the thoughts and exhale out the emotion. It has to go in and out, in and out.